Could Cam Rising win the Heisman Trophy in 2024? And where does Cam Rising rank amongst the best quarterbacks in college football? All that and more coming up on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen and view of the day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you may get your podcasts. If it's your first time tuning in, make sure you like and subscribe. Love interacting with all of you in the YouTube comments as well as on social media. We can follow our show at Locked On Utes on X. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our great friends at FanDuel. FanDuel is the place to be because you can make every moment more. As the playoffs wind down, the sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. You can visit FanDuel.com to get started. My name is JT Wistricll, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. Really fun show coming up today because, as you guys know, thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen of the day. If you're in the market for a second listen of the day, usually point you guys in the direction of Locked On College Football often with Spencer McLaughlin. Spencer, I think, does a great job breaking down the sport that we all love so much. So I thought who better to come on than Spencer to talk about Cam Rising's chances at being a Heisman Trophy winner and a Heisman finalist, which I feel like a finalist is probably more realistic just because the jump that Cam would have to make in production would be a lot for him to win the trophy. But the jump for him to get to New York, to me, is not as substantial as you may think, especially when you look at the criteria that's often for guys winning and just getting to the Heisman Trophy ceremony. So we discussed that. Also talk about where Cam ranks amongst the best quarterbacks in college football. And then a very brief, fun discussion at the end, touching on, hey, where does Utah, like who would be the teams that we would look at and go, okay, Utah for sure can't beat them. All that and more coming up on a really fun episode with Spencer McLaughlin. Hope you guys enjoy. Excited to be joined now by the host of Locked On College Football, Spencer McLaughlin, fresh off SEC and Big Ten media days, but he can still hang out with the little guy at Big 12 school of Locked On Utes. So appreciate you making the time to stop by, Spencer. And let's talk about one of the guys at those smaller schools that the Big 12 are kind of becoming now as the SEC and Big Ten separate. I think Cam Rising has a chance to win the Heisman this fall. We're going to restart because I meant to say Cam has a chance to make it to New York, but I got a little fired up and carried away. So we're going to restart that, and we're just going to do it like this.
First try.
Since I'm going to edit it, I'll just jump back right in. Excited to be joined now by the host of – oh, there we go. Excited to be joined now by the host of Locked On College Football, Spencer McLaughlin, fresh off SEC and Big Ten Media Day. And Spencer, you had a chance to talk to a lot of guys who are going to be involved in the Heisman ceremony, which is going to take place in New York in December. And I think Utah's got a guy who's got a chance to be in that mix. It's the top four quarterbacks go over to New York for the Heisman Trophy presentation. I think when you look at a guy like Cam Rising, he's got a shot because what has Cam Rising done? He rises to the occasion in the biggest moments. That's something you have to do if you're a Heisman quarterback. You have to be at your best when your best is required. It's not always the numbers is the Heisman guy. Now, granted, that helps Jaden Daniels last year, but there's been other years where the guy who wins it, it's like, well, hey, he was at the best moments, and you look at how he came through clutch here for his team. That's what Cam Rising is going to do. Also think his numbers are going to be pretty good as this offense is finally going to be more explosive this year. What else do you need to be in New York? You need to win. I think this Utah team is going to win the Big 12, and I think when you look at how Cam was the team's MVP and all of the winning plays he's made, I think he's got a shot to be in New York come December.
I'm not quite in that camp, and far be it from me to be labeled a Cam Rising hater. If you ask me right now who are the Heisman finalists, I think Jalen Milroe's one, I think Jackson Dart is one, and I think probably Carson Beck is one as well. But the reason I don't put Cam in that category is I don't think Utah's offense, though it should be good enough to win the Big 12, good enough to win the Big 12, and good enough to give Cam Rising the stats he needs to be a Heisman finalist. These are not the same thing. Even though you're in a conference with a lot of great offenses and it's the best quarterback conference in the country, he can stack up with any of the other guys in his league, but I don't think he's going to be able to have the sort of season that you need. Now, is Utah going to have the sort of year where, Cam Rising is in the national landscape enough to get Heisman chatter? Sure. But his numbers are not going to be there, which is okay because it's not the way Utah plays. He's not going to have an overabundance of rushing yards. He's not going to have, could he have a 4,000-yard season? Yeah, sure. You'd probably know better off the top of your head than myself if he's had one before. But that's my point. Like, you have to have at least 4,000, really in the mid 4,000s for passing yards. You look at the three guys that were Heisman finalists last year. Michael Penix threw for almost 5,000. Bo Nix was 4,500, and Jaden Daniels was, I think, also in the 4,500-yard range, but he also ran for 1,000 yards. So if you're not going to introduce that component, I think the numbers are going to hold him back. I don't think that should be a big point of worry for Utah fans. Would it be cool to see Cam Rising, end his career by being in New York City for the Heisman ceremony? Sure. Utah would have to be at least 11-1, if not 12-0, to make that happen, which I don't think they're going to accomplish, though I also have them winning the Big 12. I think that for Utah, it's just not an offensive system that I trust to get a Heisman winner at the quarterback position. At the running back position, sure. A defensive guy that shines, if you got the right recruit, yeah, that could happen. But at the quarterback spot, I don't think they throw the football enough. I think the sin, quote unquote, of trying to be a balanced offense holds Rising back in that regard.
You're right. Based on what Utah has shown, Cam Rising will not be in New York. But there is reason for hope that this year could be different. You have a 1,000-yard receiver in Dorian Singh. You got a guy in Brant Keithy who, isn't it crazy, Spencer, that his first 600-yard receiving season was back in 2019, and he's still a member of this Utah offense. So you got experienced guys who can make plays on the outside, and there's other quality. I mean, Damian Alford's a guy they just added. He averaged 19 yards a catch at Syracuse last year. Money Park's another one too. So I do feel like you have the receivers there. I actually think there's a chance that I have more questions about the running game than the passing game for Utah, just because those are the proven commodities, the Cam Rising, all that. I trust who's drawing up the run plays and Andy Ludwig, but the offensive line has starters and new spots or inexperienced. The running back field does not have a clear-cut guy. So I do think there's going to be a lot of occasions where Cam has to bail this offense out, and I think he's got the potential weapons around him to do it frequently. And the nice thing I do think Cam will have is, as I mentioned too, coming up big in those moments. So I will say this, because you made a good point, because I was comparing a lot of Cam's numbers to a lot of the returners in college football. And yes, of course, Dylan Gabriel threw for 3,660 yards, but you're right in what you mentioned of all the Heisman guys last year were over 4,000. So if Utah goes,
so I just double checked, by the way, Daniels was only 3,800 yards passing, but he was 1,100 yards rushing. Yeah, so essentially last season, and I think this is kind of the norm for Heisman finalist quarterbacks, you have to have over 4,500 total yards of offense, and you need to account for over 40 touchdowns.
Yeah, it's a good caveat to add, because I know you mentioned Milroe earlier, and I don't think either of us expect him to be a 4,000-yard passer. Is the only
no, but he could be close to a 1,000-yard rusher.
I think he might honestly be in that Kalen DeBoer offense and things they might try to do. So if Cam Rising had 4,000 yards passing, 30 touchdowns, let's go higher, maybe 30 to 35 touchdowns in that range, and Utah's an 11-1 Big 12 champion, is he in the Final Four to you with those numbers?
Well, they'd be a 12-1 Big 12 champion, right?
Thank you. Yes, math.
You're welcome. Yeah, math is cool. How many yards passing did you say?
If he got in between that, let's go 4,000 for this, because you're probably get
4,000 yards passing, 12-1.
Like if he had over 4,000 total yards, because we'll give him a few rushing. I don't think he's going to have too many this year, but he's over 4,000 total yards.
I think he's top 10, but I don't think he's top 3 and a finalist. I think the lineup of quarterbacks across the college football landscape is just exquisite. And you look at guys who have that dual threat capability, who play at big time programs, and certainly Utah is one of those big time programs. And they're the conference title favorite, and I think they should be. They are my pick to win the Big 12 this year, and Cam Rising is a big reason for that confidence. So the Heisman, though, is a different conversation, because you have to have the numbers, yes, but what else do you have to have? The narrative.
Not fair.
Yeah. What did you say?
I said the moments, like
the moments,
the 2-point conversion versus USC. Those are important too. But you're right,
those are moments. The moments are that moments contribute to the narrative, right? But you have to have a certain narrative going into the year. Does Cam Rising have a lot of preseason Heisman hype? I know my guy Yogi Roth, who I caught up with in Indianapolis. He is a 12 out of 10 individual, and I love Yogi's work, and I'm glad he's gone for the Pac-12 network to the Big Ten network. I do not align with him here that everything could align for Cam Rising to line up and win the Heisman, because is Utah going to be a really good team preseason? Yes, but are they going to get the same sort of attention playing in the Big 12 with the schedule that they have, where their early quote unquote non-conference game is against Baylor? Is that still being treated as a non-conference game?
Unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, well, Arizona and Kansas State are doing the same thing. It's just,
I know, it's just weird.
Yeah, it is weird. It was a last-minute move and all that sort of stuff. But are they going to play the sort of high-profile games early in the year or even throughout the season?
Win at Oklahoma State would be and maybe beating Arizona, but it tailors off after that.
I don't think Arizona is going to be that good of a team this year. I think they're going to be. I think they're a bowl team and nothing more. They're fine. I don't think they're falling off a cliff, but they lost a lot from last year. I mean, like a lot. Everyone likes to say, "Oh, they got T-Mac and they got Noah Fafita." I'm like, yeah, that's why I think they're going to be a bowl team. Oh, T-Mac's an NFL guy. Fafita, Pac-12 Freshman of the Year, deservedly so. That's a good foundation, but tell me how you are replacing an NFL offensive lineman, an NFL running back, an NFL receiver, an NFL caliber corner who went up to Washington and Ephesians Prize Dog. They lost one of their linebackers. I think they lost 2 of their defensive linemen, and they lost their defensive coordinator. And they're bringing in a whole new coaching staff. And they lost their starting tight end from a year ago, Tanner McLaughlin, who I thought was a really good football player. I do not believe Arizona is the sort of program that can replace all of that in one offseason. And I think there is a solid core there, but that's a game, you and I talked about it on Locked On College Football. That's a game I feel supremely confident Utah wins, particularly because they are at home.
Yeah, with how good Utah is at home, I definitely agree. And I will say, from a narrative standpoint, I do think it would help Cam to beat a guy like Fafita, who I think is a top 10 quarterback coming into this season. And why do I mention top 10 quarterbacks? And you even mentioned as well how loaded the quarterback class is, because that's what I want to talk about, is who are the top 10 quarterbacks in college football, and in particular, where Cam Rising ranks among them. We're going to be diving into that in one moment. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our great friends at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. You can keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. Once again, head over to ebay.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. All right, coming back in here with Spencer. When you're talking about the top 10 quarterbacks in college football, man, there are some great players on this list. Some guys I think are going to have monster season. I'll just say right off the bat, I do have Cam squeezing into the top 10. I think when you look at what he's accomplished in the moments, I think it fits. Let's run through some names before you give me discouraging looks. Spencer McLaughlin. So obviously Shedeur Sanders is going to be above him. I'd have Carson Beck above him. I'd have Quinn Ewers above him. I'd have your guy Dylan Gabriel above him. I'd have Jalen Milroe above him. I'd have Cam Ward above him. I'd have Noah Fafita above him. Now I will say this before
Where is Jackson Dart on the list?
Jackson Dart is directly behind Cam Rising. I don't have a problem. Okay, well, I will touch on that before I turn it over to you. But I think I don't have a problem if someone doesn't have Cam in the top 10. I think it's close with a number of these guys. I made a ranking today, and there were a number of ones. It's like, okay, I feel like I'm picking hairs. I feel like the guys I mentioned, I can clearly make a case for why they're better. Let's dive into the Jackson Dart argument, though. So Dart had 3,336 yards last year, 23 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 391 yards rushing, and 8 touchdowns. When you look at the last fully year or healthy that Cam played in 22, numbers are actually very comparable. Cam, just over 3,000 yards, 26 touchdowns, so more than Dart, 8 interceptions, a few more there, more rushing yards, 465, Dart more rushing touchdowns. QBR for Cam Rising, higher at 9th.
versus Dart all the way down at 23. And I'll go back to the moments. I feel like there have been games where Jackson Dart has been left a play or two on the field. I'm like, step up here. He's still really good. Once again, this is a top 10 quarterback in my opinion, but I think Cam has come through clutch a little bit more. So I give the edge to Cam Rising narrowly over a fellow, or actually, well, Cam's not from Utah, but Jackson Dart went to high school at Utah. So over a Utah guy in Dart.
I did not come adequately prepared for this particular discussion. That's my takeaway here, because it's hard to refute the point. I mean, because the other thing you have to remember when having this conversation, the 10 best quarterbacks in college football, you have to overlook a guy's NFL prospects, right? Dart or even Noah Fafita might have more arm talent than Cam Rising. But the numbers are not going to lie, and Cam has been exceptionally good. The ACC lineup of quarterbacks is pretty weak. The Big Ten is void of high-end quarterback talent. I mean, if Cam was in the Big Ten and was on a team other than Oregon with Dylan Gabriel, he'd probably be, going into this year, the quarterback I feel second best about. Like, I take him over Will Howard at Ohio State.
Drew Aller at Penn State.
I take Cam over Drew Aller. I don't dislike Drew Aller, but I take Cam.
I don't either.
Yeah, Dylan Raiola, crazy talented kid.
I know. Can we just see it first?
That exactly. That's exactly right. Or Aiden Childs at Michigan State. Like you could sell me with those two guys that there is a point in time in their careers where I'd rather have one of them compared to Cam. But that's only if they maximize their physical traits, because they are faster. I think they're a little bit more mobile than Cam is, and they have better arms. So they just have more arm talent all around. So, yeah, I think Cam being inside the top 10, fairly reasonable discussion going into the year. I think by the time the year comes to a close, you could definitely take a look at the numbers across the board and say that Cam doesn't crack that top 10 list, because you have so many young guys across the country. Those are just two names in the Big Ten. What about Nico Iamaleava at Tennessee?
I had him listed. Yeah.
With a high-powered offense. What about Jackson Arnold at Oklahoma? Crazy talented guy. What about Noah Fafita? I mean, that argument can frankly be had here with the season that Fafita had a year ago. And I mean, did you have Cam above Fafita on your list?
I actually had Fafita higher. I actually think Cam's the third best. Even though I think he's top 10, I think Cam's the third best quarterback in the Big 12.
Which is a testament to how good the quarterbacks are in the Big 12. They are really, really good. And though it might upset some people, I'm glad you put Shedeur Sanders in there, because
he's so talented.
Crazy talented. Like the numbers that he put up last year, I want to make sure I get them right. So I'm going to pull them up.
So I got the numbers on him. So 27 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions. But playing behind that offensive line with the amount of games that Travis Hunter missed too, that's insane.
Okay, he completed just over 69% of his passes last year, with one of the worst offensive lines, not just in the country, in college football in the last 5 years. I have not seen an offensive line that was so overwhelmed and depleted on a weekly basis compared to their opponents. They were not close. He had no business going over 3,000 yards and completing just under 70% of his passes and having a 27-3 touchdown interception ratio. Like, you don't have to like the guy personally. He can be flashy and showy and tap his wrist to a 3-9 Arizona State team. Like, that's what he does. If you don't like him because of that, that's fine. But if you're going to have an honest conversation about him, that guy is an incredibly talented football player and a good quarterback as well. He's not just, Tim Tebow, a good football player who's playing quarterback. He is a good quarterback. He can make all the throws. He moves well. He for the most part, I think, makes really good decisions. And when you're making a jump from the FCS to the FBS ranks, like Cam Ward, for instance, who also belongs in this conversation, preseason ACC Player of the Year, Cam Ward, alongside Damian Martinez, his backfield mate, because football. Anyway.
Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. I love sports. In fact, I never want them to stop. But unfortunately, that's the hard part about summer is we're just not quite back to football yet. College football, NFL, still a few weeks away. But that's why FanDuel is here to help you keep the sports going whenever you want. All you have to do this summer is open the app and dream up bets anytime you want because FanDuel is here for you. This summer, they're hooking up all customers with a booster of bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. You can head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel is an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. So whether it's teams in the American League or the National League, you know, FanDuel has got your back. For those Philly fans out there, they got a good lead over the Braves, right? 6 games. Can they keep it going? Can Atlanta catch up? And soon Salt Lake will have an MLB team. But in the meantime, you can get in on the FanDuel betting action today. So make sure you head over to FanDuel.com, an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball.
So when you talk about guys like that making that jump, I think there can be an adjustment period. You know, Vernon Adams, I think, made it quickly at Oregon. Dakota Prukop did not. Like it's a higher level of play. It's not the same jump, but it's still a jump like the one that is made by quarterbacks going from the high school ranks to the college ranks. Right, you have to process things faster. Guys can make plays you're not used to them being able to make. You can't outrun that defensive end. He's actually faster than you, or he knows how to adjust to this angle, or that corner is way faster than you. You got to get the ball out of your hands, or your windows are tighter. I think Cam Ward had some difficulties making that adjustment. Shedeur did not. Shedeur just stepped right in and was good from the get-go. It's how they, got things rolling early on. They didn't have some great ground game. They had Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter, and the rest of the weapons. And I think Colorado is a bowl team this year, and Shedeur Sanders is a big reason why.
I absolutely agree. I'll say this as well, too. So of the returning Power 4 quarterbacks I have ranked on this list, he's second in passing touchdowns to Locked On Ducks. Dylan Gabriel. Yes, I was going to let you say it, but anyways.
Well, I
thought you at least wanted the
that was an L. That was an L for me. I thought for a moment you were just kind of like forgetting who Oregon's quarterback was.
Was not. Come on.
We got to be better than that.
You were mentioning Heisman guys earlier. I think Gabriel's got a great shot to be in New York too. I don't know if
he's got a shot. I've talked about this on my show. I love Gabriel. I think he's the best quarterback in the Big Ten. I don't see him finishing as a Heisman finalist because, again, the leap in production that has to take place for that to happen is pretty substantial.
400 more passing yards to get over 4,000?
No, but remember what I talked about
rushing
with regards
yards.
to last year's guys. Like,
I know.
You got to be 4,500 yards and 40 touchdowns. Now, he was over 40 touchdowns accounted for at Oklahoma. He could do that again.
Yeah.
But is he going to run for 1,000 yards? No, that's not how Oregon's offense runs. Is he going to throw for 1,000 more yards than last year? He played all 12 games. Oklahoma wasn't some bum team. They were 10-2. They were good. He's on a better team. So I expect him to take a leap. I do not see him suddenly throwing for 4,700 yards and running for 300. If he does, he's just shooing to go to New York because Oregon's going to win at least 10 games, probably 11 or 12 in the regular season. So yeah, you're going to have the narrative component, but like I was saying earlier, there are just so many factors that have to go right to win the Heisman Trophy. You got to have the right team. You got to have the right narrative. You got to have the right level of attention. You have to play some big games. Oregon can provide some of those things, but you have to have the individual stats as well. Gabriel's got the preseason hype. I just don't know if he can play at that high-end Heisman level.
Well, the reason I brought up Gabriel, though, is anyways, he was first on this list of returning quarterbacks and passing touchdowns with 30. Shedeur Sanders is second at 27. He didn't play in the final game of the regular season, and they obviously didn't make a bowl game, so he could have been even higher if you look at his last year numbers. So it's impressive what he's been able to do. And, yeah, like I said, I got Cam in the top 10. This is an offense that averaged 38 points per game. So you mentioned guys potentially jumping him, and the Tennessee guy is absolutely a guy I look at.
Nico Iamaleava.
Yeah, I was scared of the last name. I'm not going to lie. So, but he's absolutely a guy I look
That's
at
what
and say,
I'm
okay.
for.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I'm for.
He's a guy that can jump Cam for sure. But I think Cam's also capable of rising up this list as well, too. And no pun intended with rising being the last name. But average 38 points per game when last healthy. Obviously the back-to-back Pac-12 championships. I mentioned the moments as well in the Rose Bowl. Even the Penn State game. I mean, my gosh, he was the only reason they were even in it in the first half because offensive line couldn't block anyone, let alone Penn State-level defensive ends. So that was a mess there. So, but let's really quick roll through some of the other guys. Like, I do have Cam over a Brady Cook. I think Brady Cook is a guy who's had some nice moments still. But another one, like if you look at his overall games in totality, only a few with multiple touchdown passes, surprisingly too. 21 touchdowns doesn't blow you away either. And I know he has a dual threat capability as well too, so still really good, but I just, like I said, I give Cam the slight edge there for coming through. Will Howard, extremely intriguing, but then he has games like the 3 interception one versus Oklahoma State. He did lose to Texas's backup, who I know is now the starter at Duke and I think has talent, but still a game like if you're of that level, I think you come through. DJU, another guy, came up short against like Washington. I think that holds him back. Riley Leonard was good, but then he got hurt and also didn't look as good against the ranked team. So how's he going to be for Notre Dame? Does Cade Klubnik finally figure it out this year? Jalen Daniels, can he stay healthy? We already mentioned Aller. KJ Jefferson, we probably know what he is. I don't think he's cracking this list. And then Connor Weigman, Avery Johnson, Garrett Nussmeier, Miller Moss, Jackson Arnold, all guys that I think could be in here. But to me, Spencer, we just haven't seen enough yet. So you said you weren't sure if you want to put Cam in the top 10 after me reading off all of those names and granted giving some of the negative stats to a few of them, but you know how good they are. Your host, Locked On College Football. Would you put Cam in the top 15 at least?
Yeah. I'd be hard pressed to list 15 quarterbacks in college football better and more proven than Cam Rising going into this year. I think you can have a lot of fluctuation on this list as the season goes on because there are some unknowns, Childs, Nico, Arnold, Wegman, Nussmeier down at LSU, somewhat of an unknown, Miller Moss at USC in a great offensive system with Lincoln Riley down there in LA. So plenty of unknowns, but Cam Rising is one of the known commodities, and it's one of the reasons that I like Utah to win the Big 12.
He absolutely is a known commodity, and hey, if he wins, leads Utah to a Big 12, maybe he'll be on his way to private jet to New York even. Never know, Spencer.
You never know.
Real quick, because we spent a lot of time focusing on this, the last thing I wanted to get your thoughts on where if Utah has the season we're hoping that they have, then they're going to be in the college football playoff facing off against the best teams in the country. How many teams, I have the number in my head, I'm curious if we have the same. How many teams would you deem that Utah just no way they're going to beat them? Like if they played them 10 times, probably losing all of them. How many teams long is that list for you?
How many? Well, probably 5. Probably
5. Whoa, that's
probably
high.
probably. I was gonna say who?
Ohio State and Georgia. They're still quite. I know Oregon's upgraded their roster, but I mean Utah just beat Oregon a couple of years ago. I'm not going to say there's no way they could beat the Ducks.
I'm just saying Kyle Whittingham is 0-2 against Dan Lanning.
I knew that was coming. Can we get our? Hey, can I at least get my quarterback this year back? And I know it didn't work well when we went up to Eugene, but by the time we faced off against you guys, it'd be on a neutral site. And Dan Lanning is really good, and Utah would clearly not be favored. But I just can't go as far as with how talented Utah still is in the trenches. I think they could hang with the Ducks. But okay, so we're obviously going to disagree there. Locked On Utes versus Locked On Ducks. But what about your other two teams? Because I assume you agree with me, Ohio State and Georgia.
Yeah, I'd throw Texas into that fold. Like, yes, I agree on the Ohio State and Georgia. I'd throw Texas into that fold.
Can I have a really quick question about Texas? Because this is something that is just I'm very curious. How well did they replace? I know they have good receivers, Byron Murphy and Sweat. Did they replace them?
Yeah. They've got dudes. They've recruited incredibly well over the last couple of seasons. They should be particularly strong coming off the edge. They brought in a couple transfers from Arizona that should provide some depth, but there's certainly going to be a drop off, particularly along the defensive line for Texas. I think receiver-wise, gosh, they've got a really, really good trio. Isaiah Bond, Matthew Golden, and Isaiah Bolden. Like that is awesome. Yeah. That is one of the premier wide receiver trios in all of college football. It's probably top 10 at least. I wonder if I could name 5 that are better. I think Oregon's is better. I think Ohio State's is better. Bama probably by a hair.
Utah. We're not that good yet. We're not that good. If they could be a top 20 receiving core, I'd be fired up. I'd be fine.
I think Utah has a top 20 receiving core if you factor in the tight ends. You got one of the best receiving tight ends in the entire country. Yeah. You got a guy who can be a 1,000-yard receiver, Money Parks. I take him as my slot gadget guy all day long, every day of the week and twice on Sunday, no matter which team I was in all of college football. So, yeah, I think Utah is in a really, really good spot to first win the Big 12, and then you just got to look at where, they're going to where they're going to fall in the playoff. Assuming they do that. I mean, they should have one of the automatic buys, which I'm sorry is so ridiculous.
Okay, come on. We're like 28 minutes into this now. Don't do this.
Automatic buys are an abomination to everything. They're an abomination. That's how I feel about automatic buys. Not for Utah specifically.
No, yeah. No.
As a general principle in college football, auto buys are ridiculous. Here's how stupid they are, JT. The entire landscape of college football conferences, they've realigned. But what is the one thing they have come to agree upon? Divisions are dumb, right? Yeah. And why are divisions dumb? Because some divisions, based on geography, are weaker than others. And so then, if you're playing in a weaker division, look at the Big Ten, for instance, you don't actually have your two best teams playing in the conference championship game. So that logic is inherently sound. It is plain and obvious. And yet, when it comes to the playoff and putting teams in, we just throw that logic to the window, out the window, by the wayside, into the dumpster. We incinerate it and say, if you win your conference, you get an automatic bye. Like, whoa. So you're telling me, as much as I think the Big 12 is going to be the most entertaining conference title chase in the country, along with the SEC, but there are legitimately 7 teams that I could reasonably pick to win the Big 12. And I'm low-key leaning towards picking Kansas to play Utah in the Big 12 championship game. I think that is entirely possible. But if you are telling me that the Big 12 is just as difficult to win as the SEC, I have a bridge in Brooklyn to sell to you. Because these two things are not the same. But you happen to be in the right conference, you have more access to a bye. So think about this. If the SEC championship game prediction that I have comes to pass, and it is a rematch of Georgia and Alabama, and Georgia wins, and Alabama is 11-2, and Georgia is 12-1, and Georgia gets the bye, and Alabama doesn't, are you actually going to tell me that what Alabama had to do going 11-2 with their schedule is harder than going 11-2 as a Big 12 champion? Please tell me that with a straight face. That's why the entire nature of auto bids is absurd on its face and just runs counter to something that we finally agreed upon and done right in college football, which is divisions are dumb. The Big Ten championship game hasn't been exciting for like 10 years. It's been horrible. It's been horrible because you had all the good teams on the same side of the conference.
They literally, the other division never won a single one. It's insane.
No, it did not win a single. I think Wisconsin has one.
Oh yeah, they might have.
I think Wisconsin has one. Let me double check.
Okay. Wait, before you get out of here too, what was your final team? You said 4 teams. What was the 5th team that you would be like, yeah, they're definitely beating Utah 10 out of 10 times?
I think Ole Miss is. I think Ole Miss.
Oh, come. Okay.
I think Ole Miss is. We don't have.
Oh my gosh, I can understand that because they have some good. They have NIL. They loaded up. Losing Judkins hurts, but I can.
Not going to hurt as much as you think. Lane Kiffin's an offensive juggernaut.
He's great. Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah, they're.
I love
very
what he
good.
did. Okay. Paul Feinbaum. That was funny.
That was excellent. So Wisconsin. Oh gosh, poor Wisconsin. They won 3 consecutive Big Ten championships and lost the Rose Bowl all 3 years.
They won 3 consecutive Big Ten championships?
2010, 2011, 2012.
Oh, way back. I was trying to remember. Okay.
Yeah, I think Ohio State had some. I think Ohio State had postseason sanctions at that time.
Makes sense.
I think I could be remembering that wrong, but Wisconsin was on the other side, with Iowa and Purdue, or Northwestern made an appearance one time. They'd get in there, they play Ohio State or Michigan. In the last 10 years, once those two programs started operating at the highest level, they blew them out of the water. They blew them out of the water. So anyway.
Yeah, it's crazy. I'm glad we're moving away from it. I could have I don't agree with everything on the playoffs, but we could have a debate about that another way. Spencer, always appreciate you stopping by. Where can everyone get more college football content?
Yeah, always, JT. I'm Locked On College Football and Locked On Ducks as well on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcasts, Monday through Friday, all year round. The content does not stop, and college football is very close. Cannot wait. Good to talk to you, man.
Great having you on as well, Spencer. That's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On Utes. We'll be back with you soon for more Utah content.